It is 6:30 p.m. This is David Sanders from Wilbraham Public Access is recording this meeting. Is there anyone else recording this meeting? Okay. We will do roll call in alphabetical order. Cheryl Caruana. Here. Tim Collins.
Present.
Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray. Rich Redeker. Mike Tirabassi. Michelle Boudreaux here. If you would please stand, Sean will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are going to begin with new business as we do not have any student representatives speaking. So we will begin with the Booster Club request to allow banners and ads on school grounds. So we have our athletic director, Mr. Frangette, and Carrie Lee from the Booster Club president. Thank you for being here.
So, Carrie, you're not alone after all.
The glory of another rain out to start another Thursday night.
For once, I'm thankful for rain. All right. Good evening, school committee members. I'm speaking to you on behalf of the Falcons Athletic Booster Club regarding an important proposal we believe will greatly benefit our school's athletic programs. We're seeking approval for a sponsorship initiative that would allow local businesses to support our student athletes while gaining valuable community exposure. This initiative involves offering local businesses the opportunity to purchase sponsorship banners to be displayed in our high school athletic fields and indoor gym areas. Key benefits of the initiative include, one, streamlining fundraising efforts between the athletic department and the Booster Club, and providing continued monetary assistance for high-end athletic needs, such as the Program 9 Huddle that we use currently that costs over $15,000 a year, new and reconditioned football helmets and lacrosse helmets that are getting more and more expensive, and program-wide equipment and uniform needs. There was a successful precedent for this type of initiative. Last year, with your approval, a similar program was initiated in the gymnasium's new scorers table. Currently, there are 9 advertising banners inside the school gym that cover the cost of this equipment. Based on the numbers provided by the athletic director over the past 3 years, the general school budget has covered between 35% and 39% of all operating expenses for athletics. The remaining expenses have been dependent on athletic revolving budget and significant assistance from the Booster Club. The goal of this new initiative is to help alleviate some of this financial pressure. As mentioned in the proposal, we're flexible with how banners are approved and seek your guidance on the most efficient approval process while making sure we're protecting the district's interests. We believe this sponsorship program will create a win-win situation for our schools, student athletes, and local businesses. We're seeking a motion to approve the banner proposals so we can begin communicating with local businesses during the summer. And we thank you very much for your time and consideration on the proposal. Happy to answer questions.
I guess I'll make a statement. I reviewed your proposal. I think in spirit, I'm in agreement with the concept that there, particularly if there are local businesses that want to be investing in the students, you know, it's reasonable to let them advertise. But I think that there are a lot of concerns about which specific vendors, you know, and, you know, the question is whether or not, you know, there's a policy. Right now, the current policy in place says that it's not allowed except if approved by the school committee. So, I mean, could see this going 2 pathways depending on the will of the committee. One pathway is we kind of tell you we're in support and spirit, and then as you have vendors that want to do this, you know, you come to us and we review them on a case-by-case basis and give a yay or a nay. The other pathway I see being a lot more challenging, where there's more of a global approval, but we're going to have to rewrite the policy and you know, I mean, it's like, you know, for instance, you know, a business that happens to sell cigarettes along with tons of other things, are they excluded? Are they not? And then how do you write that in a policy? I think could be, being sitting on the policy committee, I can see this getting into a lot of long meetings and a lot of things. So I support it in spirit, especially when, you know, The other thing is I kind of envision this kind of thing to come along with support for helping to garner some support for capital projects that we just can't get through the towns. For instance, the bleachers that were supposed to be replaced over 10 years ago that literally have duct tape and cracks and everything on them at this point, you know. But I mean, so like, you know, particularly like if there was a package where we're like, okay, we have this amount, and then we went to the towns and said, hey, if you guys pony up this, then we got a little bit out. Obviously, it's not going to be a majority, but, you know, but anyway, so I'm in support spirit. People should comment.
Sure. How much money do you think you're expecting to raise, do you think?
So because it's kind of a brand new pilot, we don't know what we don't know yet. I do feel once we kind of hit the ground running, there's a lot of banks that support us. I know Bay State Health supports football drastically. I do feel after the first year, and I think your first pathway would probably be the most beneficial, almost kind of similar when I put in memos for, you know, 2 years ago we had the scoreboard donated, same thing, put in a memo with the school committee, yes or no, same thing how we did the score table this past school year. I think that pathway is great because it's the discretion of all of us, and I think we can then dictate what is allowed or not allowed. I think long-term we can make this a very profitable group between athletics and the booster club without having to do their seasonal calendar raffles that, you know, make some money, but that money just helps offset scholarships. Our cost of expenses for new football helmets, new lacrosse helmets, reconditioning, the turnover of uniforms and the wear and tear of uniforms, like those are adding up a lot more and a lot quicker. And I think within the first year, I could project at least minimum 20 banners. And if you're at that, you're looking at $20,000 the first year. And then, you know, if another company sees something like that while they're here, we have thousands of people that come in and out of this campus, whether it's a school function, whether it's Lax Plus has a 1,800 person tournament in 2 days in the summertime and in the wintertime. The amount of streamlining and exposure that these companies can get, I think, are very valuable. Also, one of the options like we talked about is our Huddle camera, which is our live streaming network. Just in the winter alone, we had 31,000 individual views. So selling those to those companies of what is my value, what is my return on investment, I can definitely pick that up and continue to grow it. And, you know, the ultimate goal would be $40,000 to $50,000 a year off banners and advertising.
Have you reached out to Wilbraham Rec? Because I know they have banners, you know, at Burnham Field and the other fields there.
Yep.
And they might be able to guide you. The only thing I'm concerned about is that, you know, we're putting a lot on the people in our town where, you know, everyone's asking for money for different things and such like that. I like the idea. You know, that's inside the stadium, but I could also see it, you know, outside on the, you know, maybe that's going too far.
No, so our goals would be, the main spots to hit would be the football stadium and then the field
The
right
baseball.
here. Well, baseball, so you have the baseball JV field, but also our JV soccer fields right here.
Yeah.
Because they play all season long, lacrosse plays there, but it's the exposure piece. You have the Tinkham Road entrance right here. Those banners would line up facing right there when everybody's at a stop sign. So that's the selling point to them, which I think would be very helpful. And in terms of kind of targeting our businesses, this eliminates that local non-stop harassing the same probably 10% of people for sponsorship. Now we can expand to Springfield, to West Springfield, to other local areas in the Pioneer Valley area to want to get their business out there.
Okay, so I do, you know, like this idea. It's getting money, it's giving advertisement, it's taking some pressure off the towns, you know, in the district budget. And I do like the idea of, like, every time you have some people that are interested or whatever, or MOAs, memorandums of agreement, whatever, then you bring it to us. And, you know, I mean, would like a CVS or a Walgreens type work where they do sell cigarettes? Would a restaurant work that has a bar? Would you know, it's gonna take some thought process and some guidance. We might want to have a meeting later, maybe with the policy subcommittee, where some of the stuff's hashed out beforehand to give you some parameters. And then if something is pushing the parameters or outside those parameters, and you know, you could always come back for a request. So
I had a question. Your initial proposed price schedule that was in the proposal, where did that come from? Like, is that based off of, like, have you communicated with other towns that do this, and that's kind of, you know, going market as best as you can guess, or you pulling it out of the air, or?
Kind of a mix of both. I reached out to some schools out in Eastern Mass because they piloted this before. So they kind of gave me kind of a baseline and guideline of what they did, how they did it. And then we kind of, as we offered more of that a la carte offering of, you know, one banner here, but if, you know, you up it to 2 outdoor banners or an indoor and an outdoor, there's those different tiers that we offer. Still waiting to hear back from a couple local schools that do advertising. West Springfield is one of them. So that's kind of on my docket to follow up with their athletic director of what they do, how they do, and how that money is kind of dictated and what their process is of what they allow or don't allow for banners.
John, is there any specific laws or anything like that exist on books that govern any of this?
There's a policy that speaks to it specifically. It's policy KHB. And if I could just ask a clarifying question, which part of this are you most interested in? Is it like the who may advertise? Or?
Yeah, that we can. I feel pretty confident that we can do it. It's who we would be allowed to advertise.
Well, under the policy, the school committee can allow anything. I would just say that the school committee has other policies that might constrain it. For example, your drug-free workplace policy would eliminate certain things. Other things related to the goals of the school committee might constrain your choices you might want to make in other ways. For example, if there was a business that is legal and is, you know, doesn't involve the sale of anything that's specifically banned in a policy, but is not age appropriate or is not conducive to an educational setting, I think you probably would want to not allow that. So really, the way that the current policy is written, the school committee has broad discretion. I will share that I had shared my briefing with Carrie as well, and if it's okay, I think that she felt that just bringing individual proposals to the school committee may be the best way to handle it, because trying to think in advance of all the questions that might arise is really going to be hard to do. So I would recommend, you know, just keeping the policy as it is with respect to that, and you know, just making it clear to everyone that if we're, you know, soliciting or if you give us a proposal you want to buy a banner, we have to take that to the school committee, and it may fly or may not fly. I think it's similar to the policy we have right now for another advertising in the school. It has to be for flyers, and that one, it is under the jurisdiction of the superintendent. And you know, every day almost we get flyer requests, and some of them I say okay, some of them I say no way, some of them I say could be okay if you take some things out of it. So I think the school committee would be engaging in that kind of a discussion, although not on a daily basis. It said maybe 20 a year. You know, once you get your advertisers, I imagine they'll be the same ones probably year after year.
Yeah, like for example, a pizza restaurant that everyone likes to. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I wondered if there is, this kind of has to do with the advertising, but I wondered if there was going to be a conflict with current advertiser or current relationships that we have with the district or the athletic, the Booster Club or whoever has with certain businesses. would they receive priority? So these are just kind of like thought-provoking questions, I suppose. So, you know, we think about, you know, Luso or Munson Savings Bank, certain relationships, do they get priority? But also thinking about a few other things. Are we going to be limiting advertising so to reduce clutter, or is it as many banners as we can fit? Are we, you know, also are we limiting or allowing exclusivity in certain categories, so we're only allowing, you know, X number of banks or, you know, X number of insurance companies, things like that. And then also would advertisers be able to, you know, have a banner on multiple fields where it's sort of, you know, when you drive down the highway in Connecticut, there's an attorney that has every single billboard as you drive down. Like, are somebody allowed to do that? Because, I mean, that's the best advertising ever and the best bang for your buck based on this pricing, even at what you have shared with us. And then another question I had about, how did you arrive at the 3-year term for, like, pricing? Is it just sort of like a, you know, it limits kind of the workload that you have to do, maintain your relationships? Just curious.
All right, I'll try to remember
Okay.
most of those. On the 3-year, it was pretty much arbitrary in terms of not wanting to have to revisit every year. We thought 3 years was a good starting point. If there are companies, we did want to reserve the right that if there are companies that only want to try 1 year, that those would have lower priority, obviously, than a company that's willing to invest in a 3-year contract with us. I think part of the answer goes back to kind of the suggestion of how we go about approving these on some of your other questions. I think if we can get together, I think the suggestion to get together with the policy board to kind of have a list of ones that we're planning to solicit, which are likely going to include those who are very generous to our district already, the Luso, some months, right, those banks, and to reach out to those first and kind of get pre-approval for us to solicit some of those businesses, and then the actual banner would be approved by the school committee before we signed anything. I think Booster as a whole would be more comfortable, honestly, kind of putting that pressure on you guys to make that decision rather than having parents that are going to turn over as the Booster board turns over as well, to make sure that those policies are in place and that it's consistent throughout. There are options in the packages for them to get multiple banners, particularly if they want to have, we tend to have limited to like 2 outdoor banners and 1 indoor banner to kind of move them around. What were the other questions I may have forgotten?
Limiting the number of banners, just as far as like clutter on the fields and just.
Yes, and I think that will come down to the approval, the discretion on approval too. If we get to a point where we think we just look like a big walking ad and it's no longer conducive to actually going to a sporting event, we obviously have the option to not approve them. That you have the option to not approve them. And I think that that would be a wise decision over time to make sure that it still looks like Minichog and not just like a banner.
And then my last question, so under the prop distribution, so is the Booster Club is going to be soliciting and kind of selling banners. Now, is the community at large, will they also take part in that?
So we wanted to offer incentive to encourage, because as you guys know, and as in most organizations, there's a handful of people that are on the board or involved in Booster. So it's a lot to have the 7 board members be able to handle all of it. And so we wanted to give some form of incentive for, you know, others in the community. Particularly, there might be a student athlete whose parent has a close relationship with Mass Mutual and is like, I know at work I could get, you know, a banner sold there, and to give them incentive to be able to be involved in helping us generate these funds as well. Which is why we wanted to offer that a small portion that we could then allow that individual who made that connection and sold the banner an option of putting a small portion into a specific line, still held within Booster, which means it can only be spent on the school or for those in the school. But that they could say, we want that to go to specifically football, or we would like that to go to the athletic revolving fund, in order to have them have a little bit of an incentive to do that. And I know that's where some of the questions came in from the superintendent in terms of who can profit from this.
I have a question about the banners themselves. Oh, thank you. About the banners themselves and some things that came up a few years ago when we were discussing it the first time, and that was just the role of the custodians and how much work it'll be to take down the ones that are flapping or ripped, you know, in rain, and how do grass around where the banners are staked, so it doesn't look like it's overgrown. I mean, the custodians really had a lot of input, and we hope that before we do anything, we would look at the custodians' contract and talk to them, their union, because this would be a change in their environment, I would think, their work responsibilities.
So to address that, we agree completely, which you'll notice in the proposal, we said Booster is solely responsible for the upkeep maintenance. So if they're torn, we're responsible to go out there, take them down, reprint them, and put them back up. And we had planned on only having them on fencing, so they would not be staked anywhere, so it wouldn't change anything in the ground in terms of structure to try to alleviate that. But of course, we're open to any feedback that they might have of things that, you know, even if it's, they see a banner, if they just contact us, so we know we can go out there and take care of it for them. But it's not intended to put any additional work on them.
Thank you.
I do think that we need to give you a little more guidance, not just say, just go out and get them and then we can say yes or no, because that's some work. You know, for example, a pizza restaurant that sells beer, is that one we're going to do? What if it's a pizza restaurant that doesn't have alcohol and next year they get their liquor license and they have a 3-year lease? What happens if a scandal, you know, erupts because of some organization or something like that? What happens? And then are the indoor banners up all the time? Do we leave them there all the time, like kids going to school, kids walking by advertisements? Yeah, I'd be more interested in maybe, let's do a pilot with the football stadium, you know, and let's see how it goes, and then go from there. And I don't mean to limit you, and I don't mean to throw a bucket of water on all this hard work that you've already done already. It just seems that that there's a lot of big questions, you know, and I hope that we can, I don't know, maybe just doing a pilot with the football stadium might be the best place to start.
How much time do you need? Because when would you begin soliciting?
Ideally, we'd like to solicit this summer in order to, because most of them are going to want, obviously, to be able to have them up come sports season start in the fall. And I know they already are banners in the gym right now that are left up all the time.
But a month from now wouldn't prohibit you?
No. I mean, obviously, the sooner the better, but no, we will take whatever time we can get.
So just to talk about the financial piece, I think the goal here should be to try to provide you with the agency that you're seeking while staying within the guidelines of our policy. Just for those watching at home or those here tonight, the policy says that any revenue raised through advertising on school grounds should be utilized or shall be utilized for the sole benefit of the school district and deposited into the appropriate school department revolving fund. And part of that, I think, has to do with what you just talked about. You know, these things turn over, and school committees turn over, superintendents turn over, you know, athletic directors turn over. And so having a central place to hold the money is helpful, and a lot of the policies talk about putting it in an appropriate revolving account for the school and gifting the money to the school. So, but our policies do allow us to make directed gifts. So like in the example you gave, someone who wants to do a 30-year contract, but wants that money to go for an athletic scholarship for someone who's going to play baseball at the collegiate level, they could, or you could give that money to the school with the direction that this money is to be used to set up a scholarship, and that it's to be put into the scholarship revolving fund. If it is to get us bleachers, you could say, we want this to be in the Minnechaug Capital Stabilization Fund for the purpose of bleachers. If you want to put in a new infield in one of the diamonds, you could say the maintenance revolving account, because we think this money needs to be for maintenance revolving, or any combination thereof. I just think that is a cleaner way of dealing with it. I mean, there is a possibility if you don't do it that way that there could be turnover, people could forget why the money was collected or what the intention was, or even if the account exists, and that could lead to problems down the road. So I don't know what your thoughts about that are.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I think if we do go that direction, I'm gonna be on my own little island by myself soliciting hundreds of businesses for banners and advertising, because Booster Club would kind of lose the motivation to want to help in that direction. I do feel strongly, even with the turnover of how the Booster Club works and understanding parents are probably ideally here 3 to 5 years, some might be 2 to 4 years, but with the structure in place financially, now that we have a actual Booster Club committee, I know my first year was a little bit different. We have much more structure. The finances are very cut and dry in terms of what team has in their account. I have a side account and they have their own side account based on fundraising that we've done. I think, and on top of that, then it's tough for the athletic revolving because that's used for paying officials, paying for transportation, paying for uniforms. Great that it's set aside for maybe a baseball scholarship, but once it's in that athletic revolving, how do we know it's then cut and dry for that baseball scholarship still? And then you're looking at more now, so boosters like we talked about, they cover our online recruiting for our athletes with the Huddle camera that's over $15,000 a year. They cover new football helmets with football fundraising on their side with a 50-50 split. Lacrosse 50-50 split with new helmets and reconditioning. That will now all be pushed back into district, and if we're not hitting our number that we need to hit to cover those costs, then we're kind of up the creek a little bit.
And if the money that they get are in a school account, and let's say, God forbid, microburst comes through and all the signs are destroyed, where's the money going to come from the boosters to go reprint those signs and such, right?
I think that some of the concerns we have is, I mean, I think like you said, our goals are all the same. We only spend money on the school and the athletics, but we do sponsor 4 scholarships, and those are from Booster. If we put the money into the revolving fund, how are we getting the money to cover the scholarships? And so that means the Booster now will have to shift its focus on a different fundraiser. It's going to be hard for me to get the same 7 parents to fundraise separately for Booster and then separately for the school district, and I'm afraid it will fall through the cracks on that, or that we won't be as successful. I understand the constraints. I'm just not sure how to work through them, because we have things like that. I mean, right now we paid for a new pitching machine for softball. We paid for the new timing system and pads for swimming. When those requests come in, if we don't have money because we put it all into the school, we have no way of approving them and paying for them. So it just puts all the money or all the pressure back on the district to pay for it. Yes, it goes to a gift, so it helps in those costs, but it's day to day, it just means either Steve or the school committee is going to have to take all of those requests from coaches that we get monthly to pay for their items to do, because if we don't have the money, it will just, I mean, I hate to say it then just becomes your problem, in order to deal with it. And I mean, those football helmets and lacrosse helmets are really expensive, but they can't play without them. And if that money is not there, because you had to move it somewhere else because the towns didn't vote something through, then those programs are in trouble.
I wonder if it might be something that we could have more of a conversation offline, because I think we might be sort of missing each other on this one. The way, I think all I'm talking about is one additional step. I'm not talking about trying to constrain it or tie the money up or lock you from doing it. And I think it has to do with, even just put this aside, like say the football helmets that you're doing right now. I mean, technically I think the right process should be that you say, we're going to help you with the football helmets this year. Would you accept $40,000 to recondition your football helmets? And then the school committee says yes, and it's done. Then you're done.
Can I just ask them the timing of that process? I know like last year because without having to go to school committee, we were able to approve and get a timing system in a week for a swim that waits for their season to be over. So I would love to continue the conversation. I just think those are some of the concerns in terms of logistics, of making sure that it works, both in terms of our efforts and in terms of making sure timelines are appropriate.
John, what do you think about if the school committee can make a motion to authorize you to work with the boosters to come up with some guidelines and a pilot program, starting with the football stadium, how many ever posters, however you guys decide to do it, and And then everything just will be worked with an understanding between you two as a pilot program. Would that help with the time frame? Would that help with the other issues that we're facing?
I think it'd be great.
Sean, before you,
Yeah, but I don't agree with limiting it to only the football stadium.
As a pilot, just try it for the first year and see how it goes.
You're gonna, I just don't agree with that, because then only football could possibly benefit from it.
Lacrosse, soccer.
anyone that uses the turf. But can you add to your motion, if you are moving forward with it, can you add Doug to it as well? So they could work with John and/or Doug?
John or representative that you appoint. So how about this? We will leave this pilot program, whatever it shall encompass, up to the superintendent, Doug Slaughter, and/or anyone that the superintendent elects to negotiate, and they can do a scope however they see fit based on the conversation today for a pilot wherever they decide to do the pilot, and just, you know, we'll see how it runs for the first year.
So many of them may come in with a 3-year commitment.
Right.
I would say just do a 1-year commitment for the first time, and I get
Create a lot of extra work.
it's called the pilot, sir. It's just making sure it works. Then we can just go and do it, you know, renew for a couple of years.
Can you also add that, because the banners, when they approve the banners, when they come to us with the sponsors and banners, the school committee does have to approve them.
And the school committee will have to come and approve, yeah.
For
Yeah.
closing the loop.
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, any questions or further discussion? Sean, can you repeat the motion one more time?
Oh, there we go. All right, I make a motion to have the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and/or anyone that the superintendent elects to begin negotiations with the Booster Club on a pilot program for 1 year with banners, and the scope of which will be worked out between that group, amongst that group, and any banners that are approved or any corporations that are approved would have to come to get final approval from the school committee.
Okay.
Including the demonstration of the art. The copy display.
Sure, including with demonstration of the art that would be included.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. All right, questions?
Don't
or
ask me to
discussion?
say it again, please.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we will continue with the Director of Student Services, Dr. Dixon.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight the entry plan findings, as well as more information about our Excellence in Special Education awards. As you may remember from this fall, the goals of the entry plan process were to begin establishing relationships with various stakeholders, including parents, faculty, staff, students, and community partners. I also aimed to learn more about the areas of strength and challenge within the district from various perspectives, and to clearly communicate my philosophies and expectations for students, faculty, and staff. Over the course of the past 10 months, I've engaged in a combination of listening and information gathering activities, such as classroom visits, IEP meetings, stakeholder meetings and interviews, and reviewed a wide array of documents. The entry plan process did take a little longer than I initially anticipated, but I think that the additional time has allowed me to truly capture both the key themes expressed by the community, as well as to develop 4 foundational areas that will guide our practices and work as we move forward. The first overarching theme that emerged from stakeholders was a strong desire for excellence. This desire expands beyond what we may consider traditional classroom activities. While academic success is one measure, it's certainly not the sole measure of success. Stakeholders were clear that excellence, in their mind, is for all students to leave Minnetrog Regional High School as independent, lifelong learners who are able to meaningfully engage with their community. While this may look different for each student, the community strives to ensure students have developed the necessary academic, social-emotional, and personal skills needed to self-advocate, collaborate with others, and to think critically. The second overarching theme that emerged from stakeholders was the need for consistency across school buildings. Throughout this process, stakeholders expressed that their experiences across the district schools varied significantly. This included the unique culture of each school building, the available resources of each school, the impact of a particular building's schedule on how special education services could be provided, and their experiences with staff. The current grade structure in Wilbraham presents a unique challenge, which you'll hear more about later this evening, but the more frequent transitions also emphasize the need for clear, consistent procedures so that families and students know what to expect and to ensure that their experiences are as consistent as possible. The third overarching theme that emerged for stakeholders was a desire for a shared vision of special education. While it's important to ensure each child's experience is individualized based on their needs and unique circumstances, it's also vital that we ensure equitable access to special education services regardless of where a child goes to school. We've done a lot of work over the course of this year to align our practices and procedures, in part using the implementation of the new IEP form as our beacon. I'm extremely proud of our faculty and staff who rose to the challenge of having a new director, a corrective action plan from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and a new IEP form that required significant changes to our practices. We've also tried to ensure that families are aware of the changes that are taking place through our monthly Special Education Parent Advisory Council meetings, as well as caregiver trainings on the new IEP form. As we move forward, it will be important for the Student Services section of our district website to articulate our shared vision and to provide all interested parties with clear, consistent information. As I've talked about earlier tonight, the two-year grade structure of Wilbraham schools presents a unique challenge. Specifically, when we think about our substantially separate programs, by regulation, we're allowed to have a 48-month or 4-year age span within our programs. Unfortunately, the two-year grade structure means that in order to maintain our students with disabilities access to grade level peers, we need to replicate those programs across multiple schools. This can have unintended consequences, such as diluting our programmatic supports across multiple buildings, requiring us to hire duplicate staff, and increasing transitions for students who thrive on consistency and predictability. Additionally, many of our student services staff are building-based and are focused on particular buildings. While it's beneficial for staff to have in-depth knowledge of a particular building, it can unintentionally perpetuate the inconsistencies that parents and staff have noted. This is especially true during periods of staff absences, school vacations, and summer break. The next overarching theme that emerged was a desire to strengthen supports for students. Faculty and staff, as well as caregivers, have asked that we strengthen the knowledge of all staff in the impact of an individual's disability and what that disability may have on their access to both the classroom and larger school community. This includes academic tasks, the ability to develop and maintain social relationships, as well as the ability to communicate their knowledge. We've seen an increase of students who have been diagnosed with quote-unquote invisible disabilities that may not be evident just by meeting a student. For example, ADHD, trauma, or anxiety. There may be no clear signs to peers or adults that a student has a disability, and it may be possible that we may judge an individual's actions unintentionally. by providing faculty, staff, and families with a deeper understanding of the impacts an individual's disability or disabilities may have, we're better able to support them. The desire to participate in high-quality PD emerged as our fifth theme. Earlier this evening, I spoke about the new IEP format that we began to implement this school year. One of the key components of the updated IEP is a strong emphasis on database decision-making and ensuring that we're regularly progress monitoring students' growth to ensure our interventions are proving effective. As we began to roll out the new IEP, faculty and staff expressed the need for additional discipline-specific PD and how to effectively write reasonably calculated goals and objectives, how to progress monitor their students, and how to determine if their interventions are proving effective. This has been especially true for softer skills, which are often harder to measure, such as self-regulation, social skills, and self-advocacy. We've taken steps this year to begin this work. For example, Wilbraham Middle School and the district are participating in the Social, Emotional, and Behavior, or SEB Academy, which is sponsored by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And another example is that our school adjustment counselors have been working with Dr. Sarah Pfeffer from the University of Massachusetts on the development of an IEP goal and objective bank that they can use to support students. As you know, the social and emotional needs of students and adults have increased significantly over the course of the past 5 years, in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in part due to the stresses of being a child at this time. The pandemic has strained the community and wraparound supports that were available to both students and adults. And while it's been 5 years since then, we still experience the long-lasting impacts of that period. For example, prior to COVID, districts were able to refer students for partial hospitalization starting at age 6. Now I find myself baffled, along with many other staff, at the fact that partial hospitalization now only accepts students beginning at 8 years of age or older. That means that when we identify a kindergartner or first grader with a significant emotional or behavioral disability, or would like to partner with our healthcare system, we know that we will have to wait at least 2 to 3 years before they can receive medical treatment. This means that the responsibility to support students who are struggling, who may be in crisis, or who may require a higher level of care falls solely on the district. Our faculty and staff accept this responsibility and rise to the challenge on a daily basis. So what does this mean looking ahead? Using my entry plan findings and input from various stakeholders, we will develop a multi-year strategic plan for the Student Services Department, which will map out a measurable plan for addressing the identified areas of growth by the end of next month. I've developed 4 main areas, which I talked about earlier in the presentation, or strategic objectives that will focus our work. The first is that we believe by establishing and clearly articulating a shared vision of special education that embodies our core values and supports us in fulfilling our mission, we'll see greater consistency as well as improved outcomes for students with disabilities by ensuring our IEPs are rigorous and data-driven. We also believe that if we develop comprehensive, consistent district-wide frameworks for the delivery of special ed services that include standardized practices and processes, that we will ensure equitable supports for students with diverse learning needs in the least restrictive environment, and most importantly, within their home school. Additionally, we believe that if we provide high-quality professional development that is based on database decision-making, as well as the impact of a child's disability or disabilities and adverse childhood outcomes, that students will be able to both access curriculum in the larger school community, as well as improve the outcomes for all students with disabilities in their least restrictive environment. And lastly, we believe that if we examine the current structure of the Student Services Office and Department, we can determine strategies to decrease the siloed nature of our work, thereby increasing efficiency and improving consistency across all school buildings and grade levels. Alone, we can do so little, but together we can do so much. As we move through this work, and implement the 4 strategic objectives that I presented tonight, it will take collaboration between a variety of stakeholder groups beyond just our department. Over the course of the next month, we'll identify the specific action steps and supports needed, and once we've identified those, I look forward to working with our faculty and staff, our superintendent, as well as the school community and school committee to support our short and long-term goals. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Josh, how does any kind of service provider or structure live with themselves to just take things that children at 6 years of age and say, no, now it's 8 years?
So I just want to be very clear, it's not our staff
Yes.
or related service providers. And we ask ourselves that question all the time. We've reached out to, we're fortunate to be close to Connecticut, which has slightly different rules for partial hospitalization. But what we have found is that instead of partnering with healthcare, such as the hospitals or crisis, that we're needing to support students through extended evaluations or potentially alternative placements until they can stabilize and then return back to school. I will say that one of the things that we work on every year and constantly is the idea of returning students from out-of-district placements to public school, whether that is 1 day a week, whether that's a partial day. And some of those conversations have been happening over the course of the past few weeks, which has been really rewarding. And I hope that not only the state, which I know Dr. Provost shared an email from Secretary Tutwiler, who's our acting commissioner, but I'm hoping that the emphasis on social, emotional, and mental health by the department will sort of broaden to the healthcare system and decrease the ages that students need to meet before they can access those supports, and just increase supports in general. Because if we don't have anyone to collaborate with, that's a lot of stress, both emotionally for families and emotionally for us to support students.
Yeah, I think any advocacy we could do, not just us, but the educational committee could do, because though 6 years old, that's right in the middle of determining your behavior patterns.
100%.
Josh, is there anything else that you would like from us, or anything more that we can do to help you achieve your goals?
I appreciate that question. At this point, no, but I anticipate in the future, once we know exactly what steps we're going to take to accomplish those goals, that I will be coming back for support. But I would say that one of the things that was most rewarding recently is the fact that both Hamden and Wilbraham supported our budget for the most part, except for the, Kubota. But the fact that we didn't have to worry about staff reductions for our special education staff was a huge relief for both myself, our families, our students, and our faculty. So that in itself, I think, is the best thing that could happen at this point.
I do want to say that I've talked to many families, and they are very happy with your energy, your enthusiasm, professionalism, and in the couple of instances where I've been looped in on certain things, you were right on top of things. So thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Any other? Okay. So the next thing that I'm very excited to share a little bit more about is our first annual Excellence in Special Education Awards. So our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC, unfortunately they couldn't be here this evening, but we're partnering with them to honor Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District employees, volunteers, and students who have gone above and beyond to support and advocate for children with disabilities. The nominations for these awards come directly from students who receive special education services, as well as their caregivers. And I am thrilled, I notified our award recipients earlier today, but we had 78 total nominations with a total of 53 recipients, 6 of which were students, and 6 faculty and staff who have the asterisks next to their name on this list, who received more than 1 nomination from families, which I think, considering that I only gave families, I think 2, maybe 2.5 weeks to make the nominations, I think that it is quite remarkable how strong of an impact our faculty and staff have on our students and families' lives. And this is the first time that I've had students nominating students for having an impact on their life. And I think that that just speaks to how supportive our community as a whole is for all learners. So all of our award recipients will be participating, or invited to participate rather, in a ceremony on June 3rd, which unfortunately also happens to be prom night. So Dr. Provost and I'm sure Principal Hale will be doing some creative technology to both be at prom and to support our nominees. And that will be taking place from 6 to 7 in the Minnetonka Auditorium. So, thank you. And
A round of applause for all those people nominated.
Are you reaching out to the press to,
good question.
have this celebration and name these people?
So-
I don't know if they're printed or not, but it would be nice.
I can absolutely do that. I have not done that at this point. I do know that we will post this list on the district website under our student services section, except potentially for the students, because some are little and are attending Mile whereas some are older and may feel more comfortable with having their names published, but we certainly want to recognize staff and students publicly for their support of our students.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning, Lisa Carton.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm excited to provide an update on our K-3 Boost Reading Club. As you may recall from the press release that was shared with you a few weeks ago, Hampton Wilbraham applied for and this spring was awarded the Early Literacy Consortium grant from DESE. In our grant application, one of the ways we proposed to spend the funds was to provide reading tutoring to improve student literacy outcomes. The goal was to provide extra support for students who are struggling to meet grade level reading benchmarks, and we wanted to provide that support outside the regular school day. The reason we wanted to provide it outside the school day is, or we needed to, is that during the school day, teachers are using all the available time to target a student's needs. So we wanted this reading club to provide more support to help students meet grade level benchmarks. Another important consideration while we were planning was to make this club as accessible as possible for families. Sometimes transportation to before school programming can be a barrier for families, and we didn't want to prevent any student from participating. So in consultation with the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, they made a few changes in pickup times, and they were able to provide morning transportation for the families that had told us that they needed it. So that helped us make sure that there weren't barriers for our students. Well, it's called the Boost Reading Club because the primary tool used is the Boost digital platform. This is a tool that many students in the district, K-5, are already using to strengthen reading skills as part of the literacy intervention block, or what we often refer to it as the WIN block, what I need. So I need to work on something that I haven't learned yet, or I need to extend my learning to something that I'm ready for. For our struggling students, they are receiving teacher-led intervention during that time block, so there's no time for them to access Boost. The Boost Reading Club gives those students the chance to access this valuable learning tool. Boost is connected to our Amplify CKLA, our literacy curricular materials that we use now pre-K through 5. Boost improves critical reading skills through adaptive, engaging, and research-based instruction. Studies have found that students who use Boost demonstrate better growth from the beginning to the end of the year compared to those who did not use the Boost program, as measured by DIBELS, which is our universal screening tool. We knew we needed to give students the opportunity to use this powerful learning tool in addition to the interventions they were receiving during the day. So participating in Tier 1 class, getting extra support during the intervention block, and now this extra. So in preparation, we reviewed our Boost usage data and consulted with school-based reading specialists and teachers to identify students to invite. And we invited students who were not able to use Boost during the school day due to their other reading supports that they were receiving. On the Boost platform, students work through a series of quests. They're imaginative story worlds that create an engaging context for readers and spark their curiosity. Within the quests, there are skills-based activities for students that are personalized to their learning level. The platform provides built-in support for every learner. Students move at their own pace, and the activities are scaffolded when students struggle. Students have multiple opportunities to practice and retry as much as they need to ensure skill mastery. These are not stock photos. These are actually our students in the program. Students start at the level that matches their current skills, and as they move through the activities, instruction is delivered when it's most needed, reinforcing learning with precision. To get the greatest benefit from the program, the recommended amount of time on Boost for K-3 students is 30 to 45 minutes per week. So spread out over the week. It was important in our planning to ensure that students were not glued to their devices for the entire 45 minutes of the club. We wanted students to experience a variety of fun ways to practice and apply their skills. So in addition to Boost, students are engaging in literacy skill-building activities, including read-alouds, word-building games, and readers' theater. And there's a few pictures of some students participating in readers' theater at Stony Hill. Through readers' theater, students practice reading with fluency and prosody. It's like an informal performance of a text, and the students really enjoy it. So here's just an overview of who is participating and how much they're participating. Students that participate in the Boost Reading Club will receive close to 16 hours of targeted reading support and reading skills practice in addition to their school Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. Right now we have 105 students and 10 reading tutors at Miletree, Stony Hill, and Green Meadows, 3 days a week for 7 weeks. We have some students that are coming in the morning and some students that are staying later in the afternoon for that, for their clubs.
Lisa, just a quick question. Does this overlap with special education?
So what I think you're asking is, does this take the place of their special education? It does not. It's in addition to.
No, I was thinking of just the grid for the amount of minutes they do reading and that kind of thing if they're in special ed. Is this, if they did have a reading grid that said you're going to have 30 minutes, would this be extra if they're in the reading club?
This is extra. So the special education students may have their some of their secret services during that intervention or WIN block. That's why they're not on Boost, because they're receiving their specialized instruction from their special educator. So this is another way to target their particular learning level, but in addition to any of their special education services or anything that is indicated on their search delivery grid. So we expect that this extra time with targeted learning and practice opportunities will accelerate students' reading progress getting students closer to grade level benchmarks and better preparing them for the next grade level's literacy learning. So we're really excited that it is like a boost, getting them ready to go into the summer, where sometimes their skills can slip a little bit, but we're really trying to strengthen them and get them ready so they'll be able to slide into next school year with more confidence. There's another group of our friends all sitting at the table working on it. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I have a couple of quick questions here. I heard at the beginning there was some bus issues that might not have really related to anything about this program, but have there been any bus issues?
So my understanding is that we work closely with Sherry at LPVEC and making sure that she could provide this, because if she said we couldn't do it, if they didn't have the capacity at the bus company, then obviously we wouldn't have done it. But what she was able to do was once we told her where the students were that needed busing, she was able to identify, I think there's 4 buses that are, maybe 5 because we have one for Green Meadows. But those are the buses we started to pick up. The schedule was changed so they would pick up their normal run of students for the elementary school at a slightly later time. So that was causing a bit of confusion and I think stressing families out a bit because the timing was, they kept receiving information that their bus was late. Well, it was coming at a later time to accommodate the reading club. So maybe just the communication on it could have been a little bit clearer for families. But students are not arriving late to school, so that's great news across the board.
Excellent. And the last question I have is, how do we measure the effectiveness of this program?
Well, we are progress monitoring students throughout the year. Any of our students that are involved in this Boost Reading Club. We have our universal screening data that we actually have we have data team meetings coming next Friday, so we'll be able to look at any growth. And I don't feel like we can actually attribute the growth on the DIBELS directly to Boost, but it's one of the multiple things that high quality literacy instruction that it is supporting our students. We can see how quickly they're moving through the different quests. And for each grade level, there's between 20 and 30 quests that they could go through. And some of our students hadn't even done one because they were involved in other activities. So now we're seeing them go through them. We can see how quickly they go through them, and that can be an indication for us that they're developing skills. And just listening to them read and playing the games with them also gives us really good information about how they're acquiring these skills and being able to apply them.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
Is this something that you'll be running next year, being able to continue?
Well, every time the consortium grant comes up, we're going to apply for it. This is just one piece of the grant. We are able to work in collaboration with other school districts in the consortium, Agawam, Dudley-Charlton, West Springfield, and Gateway, to provide professional development for teachers and to work and pre-service teachers working with AIC, Springfield College, and Worcester State. So we've had that. Those are kind of the 2 other prongs that we're working on with this grant, but we benefit greatly from the collaboration. We're really working with the higher ed to bring those student teachers to us so that we can share with them what high quality literacy instruction looks like based on the science of reading, and really pull them into our district so that they want to come student teach here and then eventually work here. In the professional development, we're able to provide professional development for our teachers, but also give our teachers the opportunity to connect with other educators in higher ed. And it just makes it different. It's more enriching. So we'll keep applying for them.
Is there a component so this is K to 3. Mm-hmm. Is there a component for 4 to 5 or?
There isn't. This is really focused on the state's early literacy initiatives for right now.
Are you providing anything to deal with the summer learning loss? Is there an incentive for kids to read a certain number of books during the summer and something like that?
There are lots of, teachers come up with lots of reading incentives for their students to work on that. And there's a summer student support, and One Book, One Community, which has so many great activities for families, not just the student, but for the family to engage in around town. That's a real exciting opportunity. And teachers do a really good job with giving kids the, whether it's, here as a book list, or you can, sometimes they have book clubs over the summer that kids really, really like, because they, as much as they're happy that summer's here, they really do miss their teachers and their friends, and they like to come and continue that learning.
Also just add the both town libraries, they do a great job at the end of the school year. They do a kickoff to reading, and they do a lot of really great events for the students to continue reading over the summer.
They do a great job. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, so we're going to continue with old business. So we are going to discuss school choice.
Okay. So directing your attention to... Turn your microphone. Sorry, thank you. Directing your attention to your packet, you have a May 9th memo from Steve Hale. He is requesting contingent permission to add some school choice seats at the high school. And the contingency is based on where we end up with our enrollment of 7th graders, in particular in the Innovation Career Pathway Program. And so his request is if we do one section, that he be allowed to add 15 school choice seats, and that if we do 2 sections, that he'd be allowed to add 10 school choice seats. Right now, we're at 1 section.
What is the deadline? When would they need to know, and when would this be put out?
I am still getting some applications trickling in. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later when I give my report. So I do want to leave it. Originally, I had said that we'd be cutting it off at the end of the day tomorrow, but I think I want to wait until we stop getting applications, because I know a lot of this is spreading by word of mouth, and want to give that a chance to settle at the true interest level of the community.
I'd like to make a motion to accept this proposal as outlined in the memo.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Okay, so we'll do all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Operations, and Human Resources, Doug Slaughter.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so first up, I'll talk about the monthly budget update. I think the short story relative to the monthly budget update is as we proceed toward the end of the fiscal year, we're, proceeding as expected. Areas of overage, overspending that we've been tracking for the last several months are continuing to progress in a similar fashion as to what we expected. So there's no, extraordinary expense we're not seeing or haven't seen to date. So there's no real concern in that regard. We'll use the resources in those areas that are currently trending under budget to help support those. We have some outstanding resources that will come into the district. So there's some capital funding, about $150,000 for the capital expenditure that we've done, which will be reimbursed by the towns, which we need to submit billing for. I have part of that ready to go, and the rest of it I should be able to get in place early next week and send those out. So it'll also help us as far as our just overall revenue versus expenses standpoint. What I plan to do is in your June meeting, is to bring you, sort of a final year reporting, that we won't be quite done with the fiscal year our expenses relative to things other than payroll will be tapering off pretty significantly in the next few weeks. And so again, I think our budget's in good shape, and in your June meeting, I'll bring you any adjustments we need to make to the budget to help finish out the fiscal year. So I'll pause there and see if anyone has any particular questions that they have relative to what they got in their packets tonight.
We're good?
All right. Moving on to the other item on the agenda for me is fiscal 26 budget and town meetings update. So given how town meeting voted at each of the different towns, it didn't match with what you as a school committee had proposed for a budget. Your budget consists of the operational expenses, the debt expenses, and the capital expenses. There was a change from what was recommended and voted by you to a different amount in Wilbraham for capital expense. That did match with more recent information, so it would have been a recommendation made to you anyway. However, in Hamden, they decided not to fund that particular Kubota RTV tractors at all. And so either way, we have to adjust the budget. In your packet is a short memo from me, but also a motion to adjust the budget to match with the funding that the two towns have appropriated. What will happen at this point is we'll send notification, we'll send another assessment letter to the community, presuming you vote for the motion that's there. We will send a new assessment letter to each of the communities just to give them notice. Since it will not change or require them to adjust the amount that they've already appropriated through town meeting, while they could hold a town meeting with that notification, they're not required to. And if that's the case, after 45 days, it becomes an adopted budget. It's essentially a pocket approval. So my recommendation, as much as I would like us to be able to buy that piece of capital equipment, would be to move the motion that's on the memo from me, adjusting the capital budget and the amounts assessed to each of the towns. Again, this will align with what had been formally appropriated and will be below the value that Wilbraham appropriated, and then we'll send notice appropriately to the treasurers in each of the towns relative to the changes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, these numbers are just the capital assessments, the $80,970 to Hamden and the $335,030 to Wilbraham.
That's correct.
I'd like to move to adopt the capital budget of $416,000 for fiscal year 2026 for the Hamden Wilbraham Regional School District, and to assess member towns as follows: Hamden, $80,970, Wilbraham, $335,030.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
Yeah. So we're being held hostage over $4,716. Was it explained at the meeting that if they did not accept this $4,716, that it would create a crisis in the budget for the school committee?
I don't know if this is a crisis, Sean, but I believe that, it was not well understood at the town meetings that the Kubota was for snow removal and not for joyriding through trails in the woods. And honestly, probably some of that responsibility falls back on us for not doing as good a job selling it. And, we could have even put up a slide with a picture of what it looks like, which is a little mini snowplow that can go where the big snowplows can't go. Hopefully we'll be able to better advocate for it and get the towns to fund the Kubota for a fall town meeting.
I know the big issue was, Wilbraham, is Wilbraham going to pass because Wilbraham, holds 80% of the budget. The Wilbraham residents voted overwhelmingly positive with some discussion. in favor of this budget in support of the district. Those who were at the Hamden meeting, did any school committee member get up to explain anything about this to the people?
No,
Okay, is there a reason why they didn't?
I can't speak for Rich, but no. For myself, I can say no.
You just had no reason?
Correct. And Sean, I will say that regarding the budget, every year we go to town meeting, and it's not all about every town because it's about both towns have to approve the budget.
Right.
So it's not one or the other. And so I think it's really important to not be divisive, and it's really important to understand that each town, all the members of each town have the ability to vote.
Mhm.
And it's their choice, and we've had years where they've both approved. We've had years where one has approved and one is, where Hamden is approved and Wilbraham is not. But I think this is, correct. Would it have been better if it had approved, if we approved the budget as presented and we wouldn't have to be having that conversation? Absolutely, but here we are. We're lucky that, if we're fortunate that it is a small amount that we're talking about, and it is a Kubota, and we're not talking about a larger number that would require us to have to lose teachers or, have to decrease our operational budget substantially.
And we would require 2/3 of the entire school committee, correct? That would mean everybody here?
That's correct. I just wanted to offer a little bit more insight into the question you asked is another person who's at the Hammond meeting. We had provided the same presentation to both towns. That was given in Wilbraham and not given in Hamden. And we basically given the same direction to both of our moderators, saying, this is your meeting. We will follow your lead. If you want us to present this, here are the slides. We're ready to go. But if you feel like you have the votes, don't feel like you have to stop the meeting for us. In Hamden, prior to the meeting, the moderator had said, well, I feel like this is only going to create more questions, which might hold things up, and so I feel like it's better just to go. And so that is why we didn't give the presentation in Hamden that we had given in Wilbraham. In Wilbraham, Jane said, well, I think that it would be helpful for you to do the presentation, so that's why Doug did the presentation. So that had something to do with that. The strategy in Hamden was to respond to questions as they come up. In all of the rest of the capital requests, there were questions that came up that we did answer. Some of those other capital requests were voted down, the ones that were for Hamden specifically. This is the one capital request where no one asked any questions, so that's why there wasn't any discussion of this one.
I would like to bring it to your attention that throughout this budget process, it wasn't about one town not approving the budget, because we know that it's a tight year for everybody. And so there were questions. We didn't know what was going to happen. And there were questions on the Kubota that were coming up prior to town meeting because there was an increased price. So I think that it was, we can't control what happens. Provide the information. We have the discussions. We attended meetings in both towns, and it was up to the townspeople.
Yeah, I don't think it's me that's being divisive in this. I think it's Hamden that's being divisive by turning down and causing this to go to a 1/12 budget if we don't vote today to approve. And my vote would be needed to approve in order for it to approve today, and I'm not sure I'm going to.
So, Doug, would you like to explain what happens when we go to a 1/12 budget and how that works? And again, I think it's important not to place blame. We haven't done that in previous years. We deal with what is presented. We're having the discussion.
I wasn't placing blame, I was just asking questions.
I think to clarify though, so we understand, it wouldn't, if we choose to not change the budget as I moved, it would not force a 1/12 budget yet. It would force the need for another town meeting for both towns, at which point anything could happen in those town meetings.
And there's
right?
a cost associated with town meetings.
Yeah. And yes, I know for Wilbraham, it cost them about $6,000 to run a town meeting between every, the legally required advertisements and the attorney there and everything else. So, and they could choose to increase the budget to meet us. They could choose to decrease it farther, right? So there's risk, right?
Right. And if I could just say, there's actually another piece of process. Correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but so the next step, let's say, if the school committee decided to maintain its current budget or increase its request, which is another thing that you could do, would be town meetings in both towns to vote on the reconsidered budget from the school committee. If that failed, then there would be a district-wide vote in which both, would be the third town meeting essentially, in which both towns vote together as if they're one. And then if you still don't have a passed budget at that point, that's when you get into the potential 1/12 budgets.
I think the other thing we have to have respect for is, I mean, yes, the budget came up short, but the school budget is large. It's a big chunk of change for both towns. It makes up less than 60% of their budgets. And, it's a $4,000 shortfall. Camden felt they weren't in the position to cover that, but I honestly feel some of that responsibility might be on us because I don't think that it was universally understood that this was something for snow removal. And I think that there's a very good chance we'll get it funded at fall meeting, at the fall town meetings that are already planned for both towns. So I'm thankful for the budgets that were approved. Going forward, we'll be able to meet our obligations and our plans. We will be short to Kubota. We'll be spending money fixing it up for another year. And we'll be, but I know we hope that all the capital will be approved, especially, we knew the towns were tight, which is why, we initially had the bleachers on for capital because we're like, we've been waiting for 10 years, we've been asking for 10 years, we're going to do it this year, and we pulled it off again because both of the towns came back to us and said things were just tight, and so that's my feeling on it. That's why I made the motion.
Is there a way that we could fund this device for snow removal? Because from what I had heard, is that really, I'm not sure the brand that we're using right now is just rusted out in issues. Could we fund that from our E&D?
What I would suggest that technically you probably could. I think the other place we could look at would be a little easier resources. We have our facilities use revolving fund, and so I think this would be an appropriate use of that to support facility use because this tractor is used to do sanding, salting, and snow removal on sidewalks, but it's also used to move people and equipment during the warmer weather as they go from places like the high school to 1 Mile Tree around do landscaping work, etc. So it is something we could fund in another way if we want to do that. And so that's another option. Obviously, we could bring it back to a capital request, whether it be for the fall town meeting or sometime in the future. And again, we'll look at whether or not maybe utilizing some resources in our facilities use revolving fund for the purpose, and that's one way to do it. That means we're not spending that on something else. So it's part of the analysis and evaluation that you as school committee will do, and we as staff will provide you information about that and give recommendation about what's the next best choice for you to do. But there are options in that regard.
I would feel more comfortable about voting for this motion if it was said that the Kubota would be purchased and be part of the facilities, like you said, revolving account, where then again, any monies that we have in the district are roughly 80% Wilbraham and 20% Hamden.
Do we have to specify the source to purchase the Kubota?
If you want to couple both motions, which I understand Mr. Kennedy is saying would be helpful to get his vote, then I think specifying the source would be helpful to give us direction.
So, John, the current Kubota unit, is it dead? Or, is it feasible that we could get another 6 to 12 months out of the unit while we work with the towns to get it funded?
I don't know, I was actually going to ask Dr. Slaughter if it was dead, or if we could get possibly 4 months more to get to fall town meeting.
Maybe just mostly dead, right? Mostly dead is still partially alive.
From what I've heard, it's on its last leg.
It does
So.
go on, and it is still, I mean, we have spent, several $1,000s doing repair work over the last year or so on it. So its reliability is a significant question, but it is currently functioning, is my understanding. And hopeful that the workload over the summer is a little less onerous, so it could potentially last a few more months in that regard. And again, I don't know what the delivery schedule on, the replacement would be, so it might be that it would require us to be 4 or 5 months anyway, to get something. So, I think that's, not unheard of for it to last a little bit longer. It is one of those things though that could just tomorrow, sort of die. It's at that point. So it's a tricky situation. I think from a funding source standpoint, we can't assess, I will say this, we can't, Wilbraham did appropriate funding through its assessment that we requested to cover, their portion of it. But we can't I don't believe we can fund the Hampton portion from some other source. In other words, we can't assess the towns unequally relative to, capital requests.
Yeah, that's not what I was asking, Doug. I was saying if it came out of any funds, like a rolling fund that the facilities had, that would still, all of our funds, they're not district funds, they're, from the towns.
Would you be comfortable, Sean, if we'd be open to we try to get more time out of the unit we have, and we try to go to the fall meetings to get the towns to support it as a capital plan purchase, and if the unit does die and it turns into more of a crisis, then as a committee, we could discuss, I think we have multiple sources where we could fund it if we absolutely had to, but those funding sources might be better left untouched, because there really are, crisis.
So 9 years ago, we were talking about changing out the bleachers in the football stadium. And it's been 9 years and we haven't done that. So the town is saying, look, it's good that we didn't fund the bleachers because they lasted for 9 years. But what they didn't look at was how much money we have spent over the years to keep the bleachers in working order. And I believe one year we spent about $360,000 or something like that just to get some new wood and put things up. So I think that we have more than paid the district for new bleachers, but yet we never got new bleachers. We were just Frankensteining the old bleachers. So I wouldn't want to be just, if they refused the Kubota at this meeting, what makes you think they're not going to refuse the Kubota at the fall meeting?
Once again, I don't think there was a universal understanding of the people who were attending the meeting that it was, it was a necessary piece of equipment for things like snow removal, which I think most people in New England are quite empathetic to. But I mean, I don't know what was in everyone's mindset, and they certainly had the right to vote no on it if they wanted to, and that's what they did. I know it's our plan to approach a fall meeting for the bleachers. We can add this to it and see how it goes.
Do we know if the tariffs are going to have any effect on the price in 4 months on a Kubota? I don't believe they're made in the United States.
I don't have any inclination on that.
Tariffs are already in place, so I don't think it'll be a change from what it is now.
If we had a quote that was from before the quote expires after a certain period of time. I just wouldn't want to have to pay more and have to go back for more for something that we wouldn't. If we can cover the Kubota now under however we decide we want to do it, but just not push it off, because again, I'm afraid that tariffs are going to increase the price and cost the district more because of a misunderstanding over 4,000 or however you want to look at it.
What's the total cost of the Kubota again?
$22,519.
When was the quote, we had the quote that was 43,000? When was that from?
So that was from earlier in the year. Facility director reached out to the vendor to get a price. He done it via the phone. And to reach out with the folks from Hannah's, the capital planning committee, reached out and said, hey, can you get a written quote? So we asked for a written quote. When we did that, the vendor realized that they had given us the quote on a wrong model number. So when they put in the proper model number, that's why the price dropped from just shy of 43,000 to just over 23. So that was part of it. So it was just, a kind of unfortunate circumstance in getting the original quote that it was too high. And again, I think to Dave's point, the quote that we got is good for a limited period of time. Don't know if things like tariffs are starting to trickle through and start to influence price. However, this is under a state contract, so they may be required to. I think the way the state contract did, if you looked at the quote, I believe the way the state contract works is the state had gone out and had various vendors bid on these kinds of products. They often will do, it's list price minus 10% as guarantee as part of the state contract. So it could be a circumstance where the price changes, but it'll still have some level of discount because of the state contract they're under. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But we can certainly ask that question. I can certainly report back to the committee at the June meeting about if there's been sort of changes in price that are either happening or going to be happening in the short term that they're aware of. That might, make a difference as to how you want to proceed, whether to bring this before, fall town meetings for an adjusted capital item or to make a purchase in more immediate time frame with resources that the district has now.
One question before we make it. So Doug, if we fund this through the maintenance revolving account, like you suggested, the end budgetary impact of that would be that we would, whatever our E&D got certified on for this year would be $23,000 less.
In a sense, yes, it would.
Okay. I'm fine with that approach, with kind of keeping that consideration. They need the equipment, and you brought up a legitimate concern with the stuff. And I don't know, is there anyone willing to pick it up in New Hampshire and then we can save the sales tax? I mean, it's 7%, right?
I just don't want.
Do we have a pickup truck that could drive up to New Hampshire and get it?
We're already exempt from state sales tax.
Oh, okay. Look at that. Yes.
I just don't want the taxpayers in Wilbraham that already supported this to have to pay more in the fall for something. And if we could just get this taken care of now, then I would vote with the motion.
The only piece I wanted to bring up, I think there was a question that was asked and not answered, which is about this revolving fund. Would it be distributed between the towns? Essentially, charging it to the revolving fund means that you're not charging it to either town.
Right.
And these are like when the Lax Plus comes in, when people use our swimming pool, when the dance companies come in. That's the fund that would be supporting this.
I'm fine with that.
And that fund is filled from our operating assessment, which
No.
is
That fund is filled from when people come and request building use and I charge them a fee.
Fees for using facilities here.
How much is in that account?
Any thought?
Recall the exact amount off the top of my head. I looked at it in a little while. It's got a healthy balance, I guess. The way to describe it is it is a fund that our auditors are asking us to leverage more, but I think that we want to be using it for some capital, appropriation. So it's a possibility to be using it for capital type items and projects. But I think we want to be as thoughtful about using that source of funds
So I would make a motion to amend the motion from Dr. Terabasi to include that the Kubota would be purchased through those revolving funds without waiting for fall town meeting.
Second.
Any additional questions, concerns?
I don't have a question, I have a concern, and I'm glad we resolved this, because I don't want to give either of these towns another shot at cutting our budget. We worked hard to have a level service budget. I would like to see a bigger budget. I think we need to work for a bigger budget. But in our town, it wouldn't add 25 cents to a meals tax to pay for veterans. So when you start talking taxes, sometimes things can get out of control, and an unintended consequence might be we lose a level service budget, and I don't want to risk that.
I think in all fairness, though, the budget that was passed was actually not a level service budget. It was a decrease in operational expenses in a number of ways. Yes, so we advocated very hard for a level service budget, and we did fail on that this year with the towns, as we have failed on that with the towns the last several years. But we do have a budget that we feel we can work with that is approved, shorted only by the Kubota, and I think we've come up with a good solution for that.
Okay, so we will deal with the amended, please. So we'll do all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, so motion carries. So then we'll deal with the initial.
No,
Or
I
is
think,
it done?
no, you're, no,
Okay,
it's
so
good,
we're
it's
good.
done.
Okay. Thank you.
We have to vote on the original motion.
No, when you vote on the amended motion, that is the first and the amendment. If you say yes, then the whole thing has been passed. If we say no, it's no for just the amendment. We can do, if you want to do it, we can.
Doesn't matter. I follow the rules.
Well, I noticed that you seconded the amendment, so if you term it a friendly amendment, then I think you don't have to go back and vote on the motion.
Since I seconded it, that makes it friendly.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Doug? Okay, thanks, Doug.
Do we want to just vote again on the amendment, just so that we're clear, and so that there is no having to come back and do this again?
Okay, so as I originally stated, we will deal with the original motion. So all in favor?
Aye.
I think the original motion, aren't we saying no? Or,
The original motion plus the amendment.
The original motion is decreasing the budget
correct,
by that capital request.
correct.
And then we have the additional amendment where we talk about the alternative funding
Funding
source
source.
for the Kubota.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to public comment. Thank you for meeting. So we do
Actually, if you want
have,
to come back on live.
we will call on those who have signed up for public comment and those who have not. We do ask that when called, if you could please state your name and your affiliation with the district, but if you could please sit in front of that microphone and just make sure that you press the button and make sure the green light is on. And if you have any documents that you'd like to share, if you could please submit it to Lisa Burton for the record, we would appreciate it. So I have Shawnee, she may have left. Okay, perfect. Colleen Wilkins.
I was just told to sign in, and then I could draw a line saying I was not going to.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for being here and thank you for staying. Mary Lou Atkinson. Oh, well, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And then Kara Kennedy. Well, thank you for coming and thank you for listening. We appreciate the audience tonight. We thought we had a large public comment section this evening. Okay, so we will continue with subcommittee updates. Thank you. Curriculum subcommittee, Lisa's not here, so we will wait until there's actually nothing to report, it looks like. Planning committee, there's nothing to report. Finance, Operations, and Technology Subcommittee, Sean?
Nothing to report, but planning, we're meeting next week, correct?
Yes, I think, I don't,
Tuesday?
that has not, we're waiting on confirmation of the next, everyone's availability. I didn't see that everyone responded to the next meeting. It would be,
I thought I got an invitation.
oh, is it next week?
Yeah, I have a planning committee at 5:30 on Tuesday, the 20th.
Okay, so our next planning committee meeting is May 20th, 5:30 in the conference room. Sean, do you have anything for?
No, nothing to add at this time, thank you.
Okay. And then Lisa's not here for the LPDA Collaborative rep. Negotiation Subcommittee, nothing to report at this time. Policy Subcommittee, Mike.
Okay, we have the second reading on the following policies: EEA, Student Transportation Services; EEAA, Walkers and Riders; ECAF, Security Cameras in Schools. And I don't think we have a meeting scheduled, but we will schedule one should the need arise.
Excellent. Okay, and do you have anything to report on the LPDA Corporation side? Okay. So we will move on to the consent agenda.
I have a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, so we'll do all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Do we need to read about the web grant for $10,000 to Mile Tree Library?
Yes,
I'm assuming it's 10,000 and not 100,000?
10 million actually.
10,000.
Wow. What's pockets are getting deep?
Do we have the? Do you have it?
I
see
can,
it.
what I can report on this is that there was a request to what submitted by the librarian at Mile Tree. It was funded in part at the $10,000 level. The purpose of the funding is to update the furniture in the library. So over the course of the next several weeks, she will be working with Principal Heath to identify appropriate furniture for the library and give it a facelift.
Excellent.
That is so amazing. And thank you very much to Watt and everything that you're doing.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you very much. Enrollment as of May 1st was 2,871 students. That is one more student than we had on April 1st. Tonight, I'd like to update everyone on our healthcare and social assistance innovation pathway. Let me begin by unveiling the logo we've designed to brand the pathway.
No drum roll.
Then we won't see it.
It's a white blank screen.
Use your imagination.
Oh, that's great.
Little EKG blip.
And I want to give special thanks to Josh for his creative input into this. He actually designed, well, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but designed it while driving home. But he has a lot of talent, obviously. And I think it's going to really help students in the pathway have a sense of identity. So that is our new logo. We're proud of it. We used it last night, tabling for the first time. So thank you very much. Turning your attention to the photo behind us. Our official approval was announced last week at Gillette Stadium. And I actually couldn't believe it when this picture was taken. As you probably know, that is Secretary Tutwiler behind me. We were all out for the photo op as storm clouds are rolling in, and we had to get this done before it started to rain. And Tutwiler just looked at me and said, "You're going to hold the sign." So I got to be front and center in that photo. But it was it was really great to spend time with some of our school and industry and government partners who are all committed to reimagining secondary education. Lieutenant Governor Driscoll said, these programs don't just give students real-world experiences, they connect them to the industries that are driving Massachusetts' future. And so I know that some people have asked, well, what is the sort of sustainability of these? What does the outlook look like? And as I've mentioned before, in our politically polarized times, Pathway seems to be one of the few things that enjoyed bipartisan support. Governor Baker started the program, and Governor Healy expanded it. Even in the so-called skinny budget that President Trump has submitted, which would cut many tens of billions of dollars of federal education funding, there's a new grant for Pathways, a program called Make America Skilled Again. So how do you explain that? I think it's because, if Josh, you could just advance, I think it's because everybody is looking at charts that look like this. Charts that show the U.S. is experiencing the largest labor shortfall since the end of World War II. And that was a shortfall that had a solution. We knew at some point the war would end and the war fighters would come home and we'd have a workforce again. This is a shortage that we really don't know what the solution to will be. Some are predicting that we are looking at a generational workforce shortage. And I think that's a realistic prediction. We've seen the effects of declining student enrollment on schools. And the next chapter in that story has to be a shrinking workforce, right? So we're looking at nationally about 5.6 million more jobs than we have workers right now. If memory serves, I think we have about 6 million or 6.5 million residents in the state of Massachusetts. That means like almost the entire population from babies to the retired of our whole state are unfilled jobs right now. And we're kind of on the brink of a great exodus from the workforce as a lot of people reach retirement age. To bring in another nonpartisan point of view, Eileen McEnany from the Massachusetts Taxpayer Foundation said, there's no greater threat to the state's future prosperity than the shortage of skilled workers to fill the jobs of tomorrow. It doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. This is the problem that everyone's going to have to work together to solve. And just to give you a sense of what the Massachusetts picture is like, I can tell you in the next 4.5 years, it's predicted that 192,000 skilled employees will leave the Massachusetts workforce, mainly for retirement. In the same time frame, businesses will add another 250,000 jobs for skilled employees in the state of Massachusetts. And so every year, we are about 50 to 80,000 fewer graduates than jobs being created. So we're falling farther and farther behind. And that is going to be something that we need to figure out a new solution to solve. That's why I have such a passion for this kind of education. This is future-focused education. It's about preparing students for the opportunities that wait for them in their future, which are immense. I think if you look at the first part of this chart, which is the chart that represents the lives most of us have been, it's always been there weren't quite enough jobs for all the people who wanted to work, and you kind of took the job you were offered, more or less. Our kids, though, there are not going to be enough of them for all the jobs to go around, and so people are going to be fighting for them. It's already happening, if they're prepared properly. And so that's why I'm really wanting to get our choices right for our students. I think they're going to have an opportunity to punch their own ticket in ways that people from my generation never were able to. And I think that's why this is such a growing movement. So we were one of 37 districts designated last week, which brings the total number of high schools implementing Pathways in Massachusetts to 117. We're hearing from all quarters of the state, including, we're hearing from all quarters, including the state and the federal government and the business community and higher education, that student pathway programs are going to be the thing that best positions students to take advantage of these major demographic shifts that are in the works right now. It was kind of amazing to hear employers talk about their inability to grow their businesses because they can't find any workers, and the ways in which they're willing to work with schools like they never have before. You know, employers who are willing to put students through training programs, even pay for their test fees to get certifications so that when they graduate, they're able to work. My message would be, if you prepare yourselves well, if you are one of those 7th graders right now who 5 years from now, you will be entering an economy with 192,000 less skilled workers and 250,000 more jobs to pick from. You will be able to, you'll be really sitting in a catbird seat. So I'd also ask if any caregiver, teacher, or mentor seeing this meeting knows of a current 7th or 8th or 9th grader who may benefit from the pathway. I'd ask you to encourage them to sign up and give it a try. And now, speaking directly to the students, if you're sitting on the fence and need just a small additional incentive to push you to join, I'll share that Principal DeRosa has issued an ice bucket challenge, which, of course, I've accepted. And it's all on the line. You can't just back down. And this will take place at the end of the day tomorrow. It'll actually be the first thing our pathway students get to do as a cohort. So don't delay. If you sign up in the next 18 hours, you too can be one of the pathway students who gets to administer an ice bath to me at the end of the day tomorrow. If you've ever been upset by a lack of a snow day or a late bus, this is your chance. Don't miss it. And that's my report.
You know, if they put a little salt in that water, physics will tell them it'll be even colder. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that.
We don't want frostbite.
Any additional questions for John or comments?
John, I'm so happy about this. This program is just so amazing. My son Nicholas is on board. He's very excited on his own, and some other kids that I know. So I'm really looking forward to it. This is going to be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, our next meeting is Thursday, June 12th at 6:30 here in the IRC. That will be following the celebration of the HWRSD retirees, which will begin at 5 o'clock, and it will also be here. So we did the need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, C Chapter 30A, 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with HWEA or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. HWEA Unit A, C, clerical and custodial and food service. MOU recurring class coverage, MRSA. Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel contracts. Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, specifically Mass General Law, C, Chapter 214, Section 1B, Massachusetts Student Records Law, Mass General Law, C, 71, Section 34D, Massachusetts Students Regulations, 603, CMR 23 et sequentia, and Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, 20 U.S.C., Section 1232G, and 34 CFR, Part 99, regarding student transfer requests.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we will not be returning from executive session. We will be adjourning from there. Have a great night. We'll do roll call. Yeah. We'll do roll call. Cheryl? Aye. Tim?
Yes.
Sean?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
Myself, aye. We're adjourned at 8:26, moving to executive session. Yes, there will be a 5-minute break.